I'm getting it. Okay. So, thank you, Jim. We're on lesson 3. So we're talking about major tests of our faith. And this one's about commands that test our faith. So it starts, you could turn there if you want to. We're not going to read it, but Genesis 22, it starts with the command for Abraham to offer his son. Okay, so the command for Abraham to offer Isaac. Okay, hopefully that's something we're familiar with. If not, you can find that in Genesis chapter 22. Okay, the question is, all right, well, I mean, just to recount it, right? Abraham was told to go and sacrifice Isaac. He takes them, it was referenced actually today, takes him up onto the mountain. He's getting ready to sacrifice him, and God stops him and reveals that there's a ram caught in the thicket that he sacrifices instead. Okay, but every indication that we have, the story, what God's telling us, is that Abraham was following through with what God had commanded. So Abraham showed no hesitation, right? Abraham did not waver, okay, but was willing to do exactly what God said. Why do you think that was such a severe test of Abraham's faith?
Because he waited so long for the original promise of the son.
Okay, yeah. He had waited so long for that original promise to come. And here it finally is, right? And you know, Isaac's not a newborn. Isaac is, I don't know, anywhere between like 12 and 20, right? So it's not day one, right? Hey, your newborn son, I want you to sacrifice, which also would have been difficult. But you've waited for this promise. I've delivered it to you. Here we are many years later, and now you want me to do this, right? I'm sure that would have made it very difficult. Bert?
There's also like no way out of that in our world. You kill something that's dead.
Yeah.
And so like by man's reasoning, if you break your favorite toy, it's gone. Let alone
right.
You take a human life. So there's like a sense of finality that really requires, if you're going to do that, you really have to trust in God's ability to overcome what you see as restrictive. What's possible.
Yeah, if you recall, how was Abraham to offer Isaac? Do you remember specifically? It's in verse 2. It says he's to offer him as a burnt offering. What's a burnt offering look like? Burnt. Right? So you might say, okay, I mean, to your point, Bert, about finality, hey, Abraham, I want you to go up to the top of the mountain and push Isaac off. Well, any number of things could happen once Isaac gets pushed off. There's a ledge down there that he falls onto, and he's like, Dad, why'd you do that? And he's fine, right? He breaks a leg and grabs onto something, right? Like, maybe he dies, but there's some uncertainty there. When you are going to offer your son as a burnt offering, what are you going to end up with? Ashes, right? So the extent of the offering would have been challenging, right? To know how far he was going to have to go with this. Well, so yeah, LJ.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge, even if you believe that God's going to raise him from the dead,
yeah,
which he did, like just having to visually see him, have his throat cut,
yes,
be laid there and then burned. I think that would be a challenge because you have to live with that.
Yes.
Like I don't think that would just go away. I think that would be like a nightmare you had to do that thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, certainly. Like I could kill my kid. Like, well, no, you couldn't. Like, well, I had to. Right? I remember it. I'm here to tell you that you can do it. That it is possible. What's the other big challenge here? We haven't really hit on it yet for the faith. Yeah.
It seems to fly in the face of everything that God has already promised.
Yes. Right. God has promised what about Isaac?
All the world should be blessed.
The blessings would come through Isaac. right? And God clarifies that going on, right? Because God says there's going to be blessing. He's going to have children, right? And then he has Ishmael, and God says what? Not through him. That's not who the blessings are going to come through. It's going to be you and Sarah, your child, Isaac. This is the one that all the blessings are going to come through. So now God's asking him to do something that, from Abraham's perspective, is contradictory, right? So I think one of the big challenges here is like, well, I don't understand, right? Your commandments, I can't understand. I can't understand this command in light of what you've already promised. So how am I supposed to do this? So I think that would be a huge challenge, right? I think that would be a huge challenge to Abraham's faith to be like, well, which is it, God? Should I protect Isaac? Because that's the way you're going to carry out your promises. Or should I sacrifice him? Because that's what you just said. And I would imagine in that situation, like, was that really God telling me to sacrifice Isaac? Right? Or was that something else? So, I could see that being a huge challenge to his faith. Okay, what enabled him? So let's go to the second part of the question then. What enabled him to obey God even when faced with such a test? Right?
I guess probably similar to like most of us, I would assume that, throughout our life, God will pray for something, or, there'll be like kind of a progression of our faith to where, we realize, God is really with me, he's really, fulfilling his promises. And so like in Abraham's instance, like you said, it was kind of probably weird because he promised his son, but then he's asking to sacrifice. But the fact that he delivered his son, he probably just had that faith already firmly established.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just going to say, well, I'm just going to stop.
I'm going to give up on it now. Yeah, I'm sure. Definitely Abraham already had faith at this point. Like, this would have been a difficult first thing for God to ask somebody, right? There was already a relationship between God and Abraham. Do you think that helped? Yeah, for sure. Right? God and Abraham already had a relationship. He was already a friend of God. Right? What else do you think helped him get through this? Yeah.
Well, we didn't talk much about it. I don't know that I've really given it a lot of thought before, but Sarah could have been a real hindrance to this.
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever had a half-baked idea or an idea that you didn't fully explain to your wife.
Right.
But wives have the ability to make things more difficult or more easy to accomplish. And the fact that they seem to be monolithic and they both get mentioned as faithful people.
Yeah.
It's not like Abraham inside of Sarah.
Right.
So I have to say, on some level, she made it easier because she supported the decision, and he wasn't. God said it's not good for us to be alone. So,
right.
He wasn't having to do this all by himself.
Okay. Yeah. Could see that. What else? So let's look over at Hebrews 11. Let's flip over to Hebrews 11, because this talks about the contradiction to me. Right? All right, God, you said promises are going to be fulfilled through Isaac, and then you said go sacrifice, turn Isaac into a burnt offering. Right? Kill him, burn him to ashes. Right? How am I going to do that? Hebrews 11, starting in verse 17. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promises was in the act of offering up his only son, of whom it was said, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. So the Hebrews writer's like, remember, he knew God had said this, right? This wasn't something that he had figured out, but God had directly said, this is how it's going to happen. Verse 19, he considered that God was able even to raise him from the dead, from which, figuratively speaking, he did receive him back. So how did Abraham reconcile the promise of God and the commandment of God.
He knew
Yeah.
that
Oh, go ahead, Russ.
I was going to say, he didn't know exactly how, but he knew that God is faithful
Yeah.
to deliver on his promise. So even if he had to raise him from the dead, that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
God was going to have to do something to make good on his promise.
Right.
Despite killing his son.
Yeah, LJ.
I mean, he's basically already did that. Didn't he say that about himself? Like, look, I'm so old, I'm basically
Right.
dead. Like,
Yeah.
my wife is so old, she's basically dead. Like, like you created life from death.
Right.
Like, we should have been able to produce life. So
Yeah.
God can do it again.
Yeah. Chad, were you going to say? Okay. Did God say that he would raise him from the dead?
No.
So what he did, I mean, really, if we're looking at it from the human perspective, he just went straight to the impossible. Right? He's like, okay, God has made this promise. God has told me to do this thing. And the only way I can make sense of it is that God will do something impossible. But God keeps his promises, and God rewards those who follow his commands. So God will figure that out. Right? And however Abraham kind of reconciled what that process looked like, because remember, in Abraham's mind, he's got ashes. Right? How God turns those ashes back into his son Isaac. We don't know, right? But he's like, well, that must be what's going to happen. God, if that's what's necessary for God to keep his promises, then that's what God will do. And if it's necessary for God to do something else I can't imagine, then God will do that. Right? God keeps promises. He's commanded me to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. And I'm not going to waver in either of those things. So I think this is a really good starter, example. We talk about commands that are difficult. Obviously a very challenging command, but there are times where we can't figure out maybe why God says to do something. Right? God doesn't perfectly explain everything out to us. And he's like, look, this is what I want you to do. And we look at it and we're like, that doesn't seem like the right thing. Right? We deal with this, I think, a lot with church discipline, especially in today's day and age. Right? Well, how is what we're supposed to do to send this person away? To distance ourselves from them? Shouldn't we be trying to, doing anything we can to bring them back? And God says, no, do it my way. Do it the way I say. Even if that doesn't make sense to you, right? Follow my command. And that's what he expects us to do. So there are going to be times where what God commands doesn't make perfect sense to us. It might seem like, different than we would come up with. But we just have to follow God's commands, right? We got to follow this example like Abraham. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Go to Luke chapter 5. Hopefully this one is familiar as well, but I'm going to still have someone read verses 1 through 8, Luke chapter 5.
I'll do it.
Okay.
On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of
Gennesaret.
And he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out from them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word I will let down the nets." When they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boats to come help them, and they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man."
Okay. Why was this command to let down your nets a challenge or a test of Peter's faith? Yeah, go, Brian.
He was probably pretty experienced fisherman.
You'd think.
I don't think it really says how long, but I'm sure he'd be doing it for a long time. And he would know when the right time to fish, where to go. He even says he was out all night.
Right.
And didn't catch anything, so that was probably like the best time to go. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he's probably just thinking, this is ridiculous. Like, there's no point in doing this.
Right.
And that would have been like, how does he know?
Yeah.
I should know better. Just kind of like having that pride issue, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. What does Peter have that Jesus doesn't? Experience, expertise. Like, dude, I know this is my business. This is what I do, right? Like, trust me when I'm telling you, there's no point in doing this. Jonathan? Okay, same thing. All right. I think that's a big one. LJ?
I think the other part of it, obviously, a carpenter telling you how to fish when you're a professional fisherman probably was like, but just the idea of how tired they were already, just wore out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to go out there and do this again.
Right.
Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I was done 4 hours ago. We just kept going because we were desperate.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
They're just wore out at this point.
Yeah. What was he doing? Cleaning his nets. When do you clean your nets? When you're done. It's the end. Right? He's cleaned his nets. If he goes and lets his net down again, what's he going to have to do? When nothing comes up, because the fish aren't biting, what's he going to have to do? Clean his nets again. Right? So I get it, right? Like I try and take care of our paintbrushes. I do some painting and like I get them real nice and clean. But if I'm in the middle of that and Shannon's like, oh, well, can you, like, no, absolutely not. That's another day. I'm cleaning the brushes now. The painting time is done. I will not be doing any more painting. If you see me cleaning paintbrushes, it's over. Right? So yes, they were fishing all night. They're exhausted. They're cleaning the nets. They're ready to go home. Anything else that happens, he might already be put out that this dude is on his boat. Right? Like, I was really trying to go home. I was really ready for bed. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. Right? But here, okay, fine. So absolutely. Exhaustion, right? Expertise. What was the relationship between Peter and Jesus at this point? From Luke's account, this is the first time Simon has showed up. Okay, so we talked about Abraham and God. Abraham having built this relationship with God, and really God building with Abraham, right? But here with Jesus and Simon, there doesn't appear to be one. And yet he's still, what had Simon experienced that might cause him to let his nets down? What do we know he experienced that might cause him to let his nets down? The teaching of Jesus. Okay, so whatever faith Simon had, we know is at least in part due to what Jesus was saying on his boat. Okay, so again, expertise I think can be a huge struggle, right? Especially when God wants us to do something and we're sure we know better. Right? I know the best way to deal with this thing. Right? I have knowledge. And God wants me to do it differently than what I know is best. Than what I believe in my experience and my expertise. That's not going to work, God. Right? We can withdraw from them, sure. That's not going to work. I'll tell you what will work, God, is if we do it this way. Right? Yeah, it's fine, I guess, to rely somewhat on contributions, But that's not going to work for us to be able to do what we need to do. Like, we need to raise funds. I know how to raise funds. And so we need to add this other thing. Because I'm going to tell you, if we want to do what we want to do, this is the way it's going to happen. But to just trust God and to just say, okay, well, I'm just going to follow your commands, even when I feel like I know better. Even when I feel like I have some knowledge here from outside of you that says to do something different. I'm just going to follow your command. Jonathan.
Jesus actually says, put down your nets for a catch.
Yeah.
Let's go fishing for a fish.
Right.
Throw it in, you're going to catch it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Absolutely. And again, I mean, it's going to be challenging to obey when we're tired. Right? It's going to be challenging to give to people when we feel like we've given a lot. Right? Growing weary and doing good. That's going to be difficult. But it's not an excuse. Right? We don't get to a point where we're like, all right, well, I've loved all I can love. I'm just going to pack it up. We have to find it within ourselves to dig deeper to do what God calls us to do. Right? So I think those are some challenges there. All right, what blessing followed his obedience? I have two. One is way more important than the other. What were the blessings that came? First was the physical, which is what? Yeah, an astonishing quantity of fish. It says they were astonished. Right? More fish than they could believe or could figure out. Right? They saw how many it was and they were like, I don't know. I can't explain it. That's the first one. What's the second one?
He realized who he was with.
Yeah.
Or at least where he came from.
Yeah. He was called to follow Jesus. Right? That was a much greater blessing following this obedience. That he got called to follow Jesus. How do we know that was a greater blessing?
That's huge.
Well, how do we know to Simon it was a greater blessing?
Sorry,
Oh.
I'll still answer your first question.
Okay. All right, let's answer this one first. How do we know, from Simon's perspective, that following Jesus was a greater blessing?
I want to leave all the fish.
Because he left the fish. Because he walked away from it. So Simon got it. Right? All right, answer my first question, Bert.
Just, he came to terms with the fact that he was a sinful man. That's God's
Yeah.
sorrow. And that's the turning point in anybody's life. And I think anything short of that in our lives leaves us in some form of inadequate, think we're a Christian, think we're serving. You don't really come to grips with that fact. It's like, depart from me, I'm a sinner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge blessing. You make it through your life without figuring that out, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, let's go to number 3. So we got a couple of examples here. We had Abraham, we had Simon here. So number 3 is to list some other commands given to specific individuals in scriptures that would have tested their faith. Okay, so I've got a couple that kind of jumped out at me, but I'm open to anything else, but that kind of jumps out to you guys. Okay, give me one you're thinking of, even if you don't know exactly where it is.
The first time a grown male was told to be circumcised, that would be a pretty leap of faith in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that happened a couple of times. They had to get circumcised on the way into the promised land.
Especially when it's a brand new idea. Like, you've never
Right.
heard this before. Like, nobody's heard it. You're like, you sure?
Yeah. Abraham's household. I'm kind of using all of that. So I don't know if I can just give some of it up. Yeah, I'm sure that would have been challenging. LJ?
One of the ones that jumps out to me is Naaman, because he's very vocal about the fact that it's testing his faith.
Yeah.
When he's kind of arguing, that, look, we got better water in Damascus. Like, you may go to this little dirty river and
Yeah.
Jordan. Come on, there's better water. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going home.
Yeah. Then he would send the real guy out. The real guy was supposed to come out. And he sent his servant. Right? Like, how am I supposed to believe in this? Clint? Noah? Yeah.
It took them 100 years.
Yeah.
To build the ark, and that's just amazing. Like, just the faith that he had, just to push through and build this massive.
Yeah.
But something he's never seen, something all it was is God just saying, hey,
Yeah.
build this for me, and there's going to be a flood.
Yeah.
And there was.
Right. And everybody's like, Noah, water doesn't come from the sky, man. Like, that doesn't happen. That has never existed. What are you talking about?
Just think of the ridicule that he probably
Yeah.
got from the community.
Right. And every day, he's just out there working on it. No one here is going to have a 120-year career, right? Like, that's just not a possibility. We work however long our careers are, like 50 years or 60 years, like just imagine twice that long, but building a boat, right? For something that you have never seen, that no one has ever seen or heard of. It's just never happened. Absolutely. Good, Aaron.
The Apostle Paul comes to my mind where he knows he's going to go into cities and face such direct opposition, and then eventually, he is prophesied by Agabus in Acts chapter 21, where he is told, this is what's waiting for you,
Yeah.
the belt around the hands, that you're going to prison, Paul. And Paul, knowing, he says, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right. Yeah. That would have taken a lot of faith. But
Gideon is another one that
Yeah.
jumps in the name. Well, because it's one thing, like you could say it was a test of faith for them to walk around Jericho. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But you didn't really get the sense that they felt like they were really in danger when they're just walking around. Like they're hiding in Jericho. So
Right.
There's no real threat. But when you take 300 people against this giant army, you're like, we'll just bring some lanterns.
yeah. Yeah.
Like what? You mean send most of the people home?
Right. Yeah. The command, this is too many people.
Yeah.
God, it's not enough. Right? If you're Gideon, you're already worried. Look, this is the best I can do. And God's like, no, it's way too many. It's way too many. I send half these guys home. Right? That would have been very challenging. That's one I had written down too. Yeah.
When Jesus sends out the apostles, it's like, hey, why don't you be completely reliant on people around you? And also, by the way, everyone who hates me also hates you.
Yeah.
So have fun with those two things at the same time.
Yeah. Be dependent. Don't bring extra food. Don't bring an extra cloak. Don't be prepared for the road. Just depend on other people. Find good people that are willing to take you in. And guess what? He tells them, you're going to go to places that aren't going to like you, and here's what you do there. Right? You can't even be prepared for that when you get to a place where they don't want to hear your message. They don't want to have anything to do with you. Do you have something there?
The rise of Peter killing Eve.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of pressure there,
Yeah. Well, and the first command that's challenging, setting them up for the real command that's even more challenging. Yeah. To let go of that history and that mindset to change that. Yeah, I think that would have been really challenging.
That's dogmatic as the Jews were, especially.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go start bringing Gentiles in.
Right. Yeah. A couple that I had, Hosea, right? Command to do what? The two commands, right? Marry prostitute, and then and have children with her, right? And then in chapter 3, what does he have to do? Take her back, and he commands Hosea to do what? Love her. Love her again. Blows me away, right? Go and, make your life miserable by marrying this prostitute. And then when she inevitably is unfaithful to you, because everyone saw this coming, it's the whole point it's happening, Now go and take her again and love her again. Right? Get over all the things she's done and just love her again. Yeah, that's one that hit me. These prophets, Jeremiah. What God tell Jeremiah? Yeah, no wife, no children. You just can't have one. God's like, that's just off the table for you. I'm not going to allow that for you. Right? That would have been very challenging, especially considering that society. That's probably less difficult in 2025, but that would have been incredibly difficult at that time. Right? Like, this is an important part of our society, is to have sons. And you're just telling me I can't. You're just telling me that's off the table. It's not allowed. Right?
This isn't really a command, but who was the prophet that God basically just took his wife from, like killed his wife?
Ezekiel. Yeah, he's next on my list.
And then
he told there was a command, because what did he tell Ezekiel? He couldn't mourn his wife's death.
Right.
God took his wife from him and said, you cannot mourn her.
That's a test.
A huge one. And Ezekiel had it hard, because the other thing is God told him to lie on his side for 390 days. He had to lie on his side, and God told him all his food was going to have to be cooked on poop. They were going to have to burn the dung. And he negotiates to let it be animal dung instead of human dung. Right? And then he has to do on the other side for 40 days. Right? And Ezekiel's like, well, I'm just going to spend a year plus just lying on my side. They had him tied up in ropes. And he had rations. And he just had to live like that to be obedient to God. Again, the prophets had it hard. Isaiah walked naked and barefoot for 3 years. That's what he tells him to do. And he just does it. Right? These are the people that God calls. Right? So the people that God calls, he then challenges them to do something difficult in trust to him. Right? The people that he's sending forth into the world, he challenges them to do these things, these difficult things, to endure loss without mourning, to just go without things. Did Jeremiah have a right to get married? I mean, like, according to the law, apart from this command of God, if God hadn't said anything, could Jeremiah have gotten married? 100%. Right? I don't think he was, ugly. Right? I don't think there was something preventing Jeremiah from getting married. But God's like, no, I'm not going to allow you to do it. And that's outside of the normal law. But for you, this is what you have to do. For you, you're going to have to live your life this way. You're going to have to sacrifice in this way. You're going to have to go without this thing. Right? You're going to have to be made uncomfortable. You're going to have to be embarrassed. Do you think it was embarrassing for Isaiah to walk around naked and barefoot for 3 years? 100%. But he just had to do it. Because that's what God called on him to do. One of the other ones that I had on here, thinking of New Testament examples, is Onesimus and Philemon. The command for them to reconcile. Right? Like how challenging that would have been. Should have been easier because they were Christians, but there was clearly a problem between them. And Paul's like, no, I'm going to send you back. I want you to go back. I know you ran away and you had your reasons for it, but I'm sending you back. And Philemon, I want you to take him back and treat him as a brother. Right? How challenging that would be, how that would turn your whole household on its ear to do that. Right? But that's what was commanded. LJ?
Paul is thorn in the flesh.
Yeah.
That was a test.
Endure it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the command. Trust my faith, or trust my grace. I've given you more than enough. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take that away. Yeah, I think 100%. So, I mean, there's tons of them, right? There's tons of examples. But again, what stands out to me is our faith is going to be challenged. Our faith is going to be challenged by the commands of God. The more that we are trying to grow closer to Him, feels like the greater that challenge is going to be. Right? If you're trying to purify silver or gold, some of the ways that we think about 1 Peter chapter 1, talking about purifying our faith, right? If you got low heat, what are you going to get? If you're trying to purify gold in low heat, what are you going to get?
More gold, more trash.
Yeah, right. It's not going to be very pure, is it? How are you going to get it as pure as you want it? More heat, right? I can get it this pure with this much heat and this much time. But if I want to get it really pure, it's going to take more heat and more time. It's going to have to be in the heat for longer. It's going to have to suffer for longer. So I shouldn't be surprised when God's commands call me to suffer, when God's commands call me to do things that I'm uncomfortable with, right? When God's commands challenge me to say, well, am I really going to trust Him or not? When there is a really easy, sinful way out of a bad situation, and that just drops in my lap. Right? The challenge of my faith is to say, I'm not going to take that. It'd be super easy, but it's wrong. And so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what God commands. I'm just going to trust God in this situation. All right. Let's move on to number 4. All right. There are conditions under which the command to assemble for worship becomes a test of one's faith. What are some conditions where that might be the case? Yeah, right.
I think the biggest one probably, if this were to happen, if they were to pass a law that said we can't assemble for religious purposes.
I think they did that some places.
Yeah. There are places right now where that's the law. That would be incredibly challenging.
I mean, they did that in America.
That's true. Yeah, we did have a share of that during the pandemic for sure, where people's faith were challenged. In that case, right, it was not only laws, but we saw in a lot of cases what else was challenging their faith to assemble. Fear, and who else was getting in the way? Not just the law. Elders, right? Elders and leaders in the church were saying, we're not going to assemble. We're going to do what the law says, and we're not going to assemble. So now someone who's trying to do what God has commanded is someone, they're being thwarted by the law, by man, and by Christians. Right? That would have been very challenging to still assemble and to find a place to assemble. Or to have to coordinate assembling because this congregation has said we're not going to meet. But I now have to reach out. Who am I going to assemble with? I might be reaching out to my fellow Christians and being like, look, I don't think this is right. God tells us to do this. Let's assemble at my house. Right? Let's assemble at this place. And we're going to do what God says. That's what I'm interested in. And endure whatever that is, right? As they face that. That's a good one. What else?
Bosses.
What's that?
Bosses. Sometimes your boss will tell
Yeah.
you, there's no way in this world I'm giving you that time frame to not be at work. And you do that, you're fired. You do that, your whole livelihood is in jeopardy.
Yeah. When your livelihood is at risk for assembling. Whether that is, something unexpected, or whether you are saying, look, like, I've been trying to find a job, and the job I can find requires me to work on Sunday. right? That would be a test of your faith. Well, am I going to go for that job? Or am I going to wait and say, look, I trust that there's a job that I can do that's not going to require this of me. Right? Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mystery to us here in the U.S. that I read all the time about in Africa, different countries or locations where people are literally being beheaded.
Yeah.
These warlords come in and they'll behead everybody in the building.
Yeah.
And those people are still showing up to worship.
Yes. Yeah.
We can't really comprehend, but it happens.
Yeah, like open persecution. Yeah, again, something we don't really experience. I was trying to think of some things closer to home, right? So,
relationships.
What do you mean by that?
Your wife wants to go to the beach. Your husband wants to go to the beach.
Yeah.
They haven't had any time to spend together with you this week.
Yeah.
Your grandmother comes into town on a Sunday and wants to take everybody to Disney World.
Right? Yeah. Or earthly relationships. I was thinking the relationship at the church. What if the brethren are not loving or welcoming? Right? Would that be a test of your faith to show up and to worship with people that don't really particularly care or want you there? What if the right place to worship, right, the faithful brethren are far away? You know, our friend Justin Paget went to veterinary school in Montana, and where he was, or I think he was interning, but where he was living and where the closest congregation was 3 hours. And so he had to drive 3 hours to worship. But guess what he did? He drove 3 hours because that's what was necessary. But do you think that was a challenge and a test? 100%, right? I don't like getting up an hour and a half before services start. So I can't imagine if I had to wake up more than 3 hours and then do just a whole day of driving to worship God, right? That would be very difficult. You know, I think about people that are wholly dependent on others. I think about some of the people in Jamaica that they're just dependent on Maxwell to get them to services. They don't really have a way, or they're going to have to walk it, right? What if we had to walk? Everybody had to walk to services from their home, right? Not so bad for us, right? But it'd be really difficult for me. That would be an all-day thing, right? To walk to services. But again, if that's what it took, then that's what you do, right? I think about Andrew, right? He got to sleep at 5:30 this morning, and then he slept however long he could, and then he came to services. And I realized that when he never misses a Sunday, right? He's here every Sunday. He makes sure to make that work. I don't think when he became a police officer, this schedule was the thing on his mind, but it's become a necessity for him. But he's like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this happen. I've seen people show up Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights in I've worked all day clothes, right? Like we've seen it, but it's just, look, this is what God commands. And so even though it could be challenging here, I'm just going to do what God tells me to do. I'm going to assemble with the saints, right? And I mean, this doesn't even get into, I don't feel 100%, right? This doesn't even get into, some of those challenges. This, even for people that are, that want to be here, there can be challenges that arise. Clint?
Yeah, my first one was health, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of our elderly members that, like Ms. Colleen, she wants to be here.
Yeah.
Every time, and sometimes she just can't make it because of her health. That's a test, I'm sure, of her faith.
Yeah. And the overcoming, when you see her here, right? And she's made it. She's chosen. I think we see that with lots of people. We've known many people, many of us through our lives, where we've seen like, okay, I know this person's hurting. Like, I know this person's in pain. I know Kathy hurts every time she's here, right? I know that she's hurting physically, okay? But she's still here because that's not going to stop her. She has overcome that, right? And found a way to do that. And obviously we can't know anyone else's threshold of pain, but what an encouragement it is when we see people we know are hurting here worshiping with us and prioritizing that, right? That can be such a blessing to us. Okay, let's look at number 5. There are conditions under which the command to give liberally becomes a test of one's faith. What are some conditions there? You think that might be challenging? Yeah, Brian.
Just financial problems, you're having trouble paying your bills, or,
Yeah.
unexpected things come up financially.
Yeah. Unexpected things happen with your expenses, right? That's definitely one. Yeah.
You don't trust the leadership of the congregation to spend those out.
Oh, that could be a challenge for sure, right? Will you give if you don't fully agree with everything that this congregation is doing? I mean, some might be like, I have a scriptural objection where you'd have to decide what to do. Does that erase your obligation to give liberally? No. You might say, I can't give to this congregation, right? That might be a decision you make. I feel like I'm doing what God calls me to do, to assemble with the saints, to be here, but I don't feel like I'm following God's commands, contributing here. I might choose to contribute somewhere else, right? But it could be a non-scriptural objection too, right? Like, I don't like these guys. I don't like that curriculum. I don't like that thing. I don't like VBS. I don't think we should do it, right? I think it's a waste of time. That's my personal opinion. But will I contribute and be a part of this, right? I don't want the sign to change, right? I want it to say exactly what it says right now. But will I still contribute, and will I still be okay with a change that's something that's different than what I want? Not a scriptural objection. Just don't like it. But will I still be a part of it? LJ.
I think when you first come out of the world, become a Christian, and now all of a sudden you're supposed to give, it means that there's a lot of changes that probably have to be made in your life.
Yeah.
It's not like let's start giving, but it's
right.
like now we don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Now we don't have year passes to Disney.
Yeah.
Now we don't go to the movies every Friday, like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It can be a dramatic difference in your life. It's going to look totally different.
Yeah.
It's not a small thing.
Right. Maybe we don't live here anymore, right? As Americans, what does our lifestyle tend to look like?
Richest people on the planet.
For sure. And we do the most we can afford, right? If you call somebody to get a mortgage, what are they going to tell you?
We just got you cleared for the max level of.
That's right. This is the most house you can afford, right? I can give you a number. I can run you a calculation. This is the most house you can afford, right? And so you're like, okay, well, that's what I'm looking for. You're not like, tell me half of what I could afford, right? It's the most. And so we tend to live lifestyles that are the most we can afford, right? I can upgrade these things in my life, right? And maybe that's fine. Maybe I can do those things and I can give at the same time. Well, what happens when something changes, right? What happens when I lose my job and I'm living the most lifestyle I can afford? Well, now I find a new job, but I can't give and afford the same lifestyle. Well, what will I do? Will I sell my house right? Or my car or whatever and downgrade my lifestyle? Or will I eliminate my giving, downgrade my giving, right? I think that's a challenge we face. And when we build bigger barns, then we invite that kind of challenge to ourselves. Instead of saying, look, I don't need to live the max affordable lifestyle. I need to prioritize giving, right? I need to take care of my family. I need to do these things, but I don't need to enjoy every possible luxury, right? That's not what I'm called to do, because I don't want to put myself in a situation where, should I get into trouble, right? Should things change, that now I have to choose between all my commitments that I've signed up for and God, right? I don't want to be in that kind of situation. Yeah. You have things you want. That's another, I think that's another thing that can get in the way of giving liberally. Hey, we want to buy a new house. We want to buy a new car. Okay, so we would give this much, but we need to set that money aside for something else. Right? Again, like, is that my mindset? Or am I going to say, I'm going to trust God, because the only way that we're doing any of these things is by trusting God. Right? Okay. Let's go to the backside there. Luke 17, 3-5, Jesus gave a command that the apostles apparently thought was a test of faith. What was that command? This is interesting. I guess I hadn't seen this before. Go to Luke 17. Somebody read verses 3-5 for us.
Be on your guard. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. And if he sins against you seven times a day, and return to you 7 times, saying, I repent, forgive him. The apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith.
All right, but what's it sound like they thought was a faith testing command? Yeah, forgiving your brother. I like how Luke does this, right? That would have been challenging. As often as he repents, you just forgive him, right? And they're like, "Will you help us? Will you help us? I'm not there. I'm not there from a trust standpoint." All right, let's go to question 7. List some other commands that on a day-to-day basis test our faith. Be prepared to tell why strong faith would be required to obey each commandment listed. So what are some other commands daily that might test your faith? Yeah. Bert.
Like everything in boy world, the man world says, stand up for yourself, be the strongest, loudest, force your will upon whoever tries to oppose you.
Yeah.
And be strong that way. And then Jesus is like, die to yourself, serve other people.
Yeah.
If you try to save yourself, you're going to lose everything, basically. And that's it's a huge concept. To say it's a paradigm shift is like, I don't know, it's the biggest understatement ever.
Yeah.
It's a whole different way of thinking, and it's ingrained in us, I think, as young boys and men, and as old men. It's just ingrained in us. It's not what we want to do.
Yeah. Why else? So I think it flies in the face of what we are taught and see 100%. Why else is it so challenging to die to self?
It's unnatural.
Yes.
That's what I'm driving at. We've seen it modeled, but we've seen it modeled because that's the easiest thing for everybody to step into. We've seen the arrogance, we've seen the prideful strength modeled because it's the easiest way to live your life.
Yeah.
So Jesus calls us to be something that's totally different than what feels okay.
Yeah.
And meekness is a good way to get beat up in this world. And so we have to figure out how to make that all work.
Yeah. I guess why is it unnatural? Beyond what we're taught, beyond what we see, what does it require for us to die to self? Humility? Yeah. And if I'm not taking care of myself, then what? That's the thinking of the world, right? If I'm not taking care of myself, then nobody will, right? But the thinking of Jesus is what? If I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm dependent on God to do it, right? So the humility to give that up, right? And we see this. I mean, you see this in traumatized people, right? Who have suffered at the hands of others and are like, well, I have to make sure that these things happen because I know I can't depend on anyone but myself. Right? And Jesus says, no, just depend on me. Don't do that. Right? Don't go to that life. Just depend on me. And if I'm not going to be looking out for myself, then I'm just fully trusting that God's going to be looking out for me. Which again, I think is, it's fundamental. Right? It's fundamental to this walk that we just have to depend on God. Will He take care of me? Right? That's the question. Will you, God? Will you take care of me? Because no one else has. Right? Not really. Will you? Will you be the one that does? Yeah, I think that's a huge one. What else? Yeah, Jeff.
Matthew 5, love your enemies.
Yeah, I had that too.
I think that's one of the hardest ones. Just politically speaking, I hear people that have these crazy political ideas that just kind of makes my blood boil. I don't even want to read anything anymore because every time it kind of.
Yeah. Why is that a major test of your faith? Besides, just the anger that seems natural. Where does faith come into that? What do we have to trust in?
God's going to finally punish who needs to be punished and relieve who needs to be relieved.
Yeah, God's justice. I'm wholly reliant now on God's justice. I'm not meting it out, right? I'm going to shout that guy down because he needs to hear it, right? I'm going to shut that guy out, but I'm going to trust in God, right? I'm going to trust in God's justice to handle the evil that I see, right? If it is in fact evil. I see things that are bad, but I really am not in a position to be like, well, I know why this person did this thing. I can see the results of it, but I trust in God's justice that God says, no, that was on purpose. I'll deal with that, right? Or you didn't know. You didn't know what was going on there, right? So I've got to trust in God's justice there, and particularly when we're dealing with ourselves, and this again goes back to humility, we often make enemies or have enemies are the people who we feel like treat us poorly. And so to trust in God here is to say, I'm not deserving of some kind of treatment. I'm not deserving of people treating me the way that I want. That's not something God has promised me. It's not something I've earned, right? And so I don't have a right to that. I'm not worthy of that. It just, things are going to happen. And I need to get over myself when I feel like I'm not being treated the way that I should be treated. Yeah, Case.
That gets harder for me, especially when it's not even me. It's why is that person treating this person that I love that way? That makes me angrier.
Right.
Because I can get over it. But
right.
If they're treating someone that I love poorly, that makes me so mad.
Yeah. But they're also not worthy of being treated a particular way. Right? And really even going into today's lesson, right? Like, how are we supposed to respond to our enemies? What should our response be? Kindness. We do good to them. Right? Who knows whether the mercy and love we show causes someone doing evil to turn and do good instead? Right? Who knows whether God could work through the good that we're trying to do? Right? That what's missing right now, the reason that's not happening and the reason this person is continuing to do evil is because no one's willing to show the kindness and the mercy. And God's ready to change this heart. Right? It's there. God's ready to work. And He's just waiting on one of us to step up and be like, I'll do it. I'll be loving. I'll be merciful here. And then God can work through that. So we shortchange God. Right? We are like, well, God's arm's too short. God can't save that person. Right? They want to pack the cord. Can't save them. Right? Whatever it is, right? We have this idea in our minds that some people are just, they're unworthy. They're unworthy of God's grace. They can't ever get there. God can't change them. Okay? And of course it means that we've forgotten what God did with us. Because if I remember what God did with me, then I can never say that. I can never say that about anybody else. I love what Jonathan said. It's something we talk about in our house quite a bit. You only deserve the one thing, and it's death. That's it. If you want to talk about what you deserve, it's just death. If you are talking about anything else that you feel like you deserve, you're wrong. You don't deserve that. You only deserve death. So yes, it's going to be challenging to trust God about that and to show love and kindness for someone else. And guess what might happen if I try and show love and mercy to my enemy? Guess what might happen?
Two different options, I suppose.
Yeah.
Either they can take advantage of you and maybe learn nothing from it.
Yeah. Maybe
they do or don't take advantage of you.
Yeah.
They learn something from it.
They might hurt me. Right? If I'm vulnerable to my enemy through turning my cheek, through love, through kindness, then I expose myself to being hurt. What's the famous verse God says about not being hurt? How He wants us not to be hurt. That famous, the famous verse where God says, don't let people hurt you.
Why do you not let them suffer wrong?
Right. Good. That verse doesn't exist. There's no verse where God says, don't let people hurt you. That's not on this list. That'd be the easiest command to fulfill, right? We wouldn't be talking about that one. God never says, don't let people hurt you. God says to love. Does Jesus hurt? By the people He was showing love and compassion to? Was Jesus hurt? Yeah. By us? Yeah. So we don't get to go through lives without hurt or have the expectation that we're going to go through lives without hurt. So we should be prepared for suffering because that's going to be a part of this. What else? Yeah, Aaron.
It's the idea of cutting off your hand or plucking at your eye.
Yes.
Giving stuff up that God says it's not good for you, even though it's not inherently sinful.
Yeah. Yeah, cut off your hand, pluck out your eye. I didn't write that one down, but it came to my mind. Why is that? Why is that a test of our faith?
Because it shows devotion.
Yeah.
It means I'm going to have to give up something that's near and dear to my heart that I really want.
Right. Yeah, it does. It shows. It shows I'm all in. Right? No one cuts out their eye half-heartedly. Like, hey, do you want to be in this club? Like, maybe. But you got to cut out your eye. All right. Well, it turns out I don't like the times that you guys meet. Right? That'd be real dumb. But it's full devotion. Right? If you're gonna take your eye out, if you're gonna sacrifice to that extent, right? Which is Jesus' point. If you're going to sacrifice to that extent, it's because you're fully committed. And it means that you're going to look different. It means that you're going to make different decisions. It means that you're probably, in today's day and age, going to have to hear from other Christians, like, why'd you do that? Well, because I felt like I needed to do it to be devoted to God, right? To do what God wanted me to do, I felt like I needed to do that. Well, you didn't really have to do that. Like, okay, thanks. This is real helpful. I felt like I did, right? And so that's why. That's why I threw out my TV. You can watch TV. It's okay. God doesn't say you can't watch TV. That's not what I'm after. I'm after devotion to God, and that's what I needed to do. That was important for me, right? Because it was taking my time. It was leading me down the wrong road, right? Whatever my reasoning is, I'm devoted to God. That's why I did it. So we're gonna miss out on things. You're gonna show up at work, and everybody's gonna be talking about what they watched last night, and you're gonna be like, "Sounds great. I didn't do that. I'm not in this club." Right? Because I had to cut that hand off. Because it was keeping me from devotion to God. Right? Hey, I can't call an Uber because I have a dumb phone. But that's what I needed. That's what I needed to do to serve God. I had to make that sacrifice. Right? We're gonna miss out on things. We're gonna be different. But we have to be devoted. And we're going to run into, I think, those things that if we're not really fully committed, that people could talk us out of, right? Like, hey, I think I need to cut off my internet service. You don't need to cut off your internet service. Like, I think I do. I think it's taking me away from God. And it's like, let's look. There's no verse that says you can't have internet, right? You just need to do these things, right? And that's going to be a test. Well, am I as committed as I say I am? Am I as all in as I say I am? Or am I going to let myself be talked out of this kind of stuff? Right? I come back to Ezra all the time. Right? Ezra just asks for a guard. He will give it to you. It's not a problem. And Ezra's like, no, we're not going to do that. I'm not willing to do that. I've told him God will protect us. How can I go and ask for a guard now? Right? We're just going to trust God here and go without. And that's okay. That's okay that we don't experience the same things that everybody else experiences. That's okay that we are more at risk than other people are. Right? I'm not gonna own a firearm and defend my home and my family. Because I don't want to take a life. I'm not okay with that. Right? How could you do that? I feel like that's what's right. I feel like that's what's right for me. I'm going to do that because that's what I think I need to do. Right? Am I going to be devoted like that or not? And find those things that I sacrifice, and I need to sacrifice for Him. I think that's a good one. I've got one here we haven't hit on specifically. But it says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. How many things can we do with selfish ambition and conceit? None of them. Zero things. Right? Again, that level of trust in God. Right? Because what's natural to me, Bert nailed it, right? What's natural to me is like, look, I need this for me. I need to kind of push my way here. Okay? Because if I don't, no one else is going to stand up for me. So I got to take care of number one here. And God says, no, don't do anything like that. And I think, especially this is in dealing with the church, right? Dealing with our brethren, right? I want what you want. I would much rather, this is the call. I would much rather sacrifice what I want for you. I'm going to count others, in humility count others more significant than self, right? So your opinion is 2 votes and mine's 1. But you win, right? Like, what if I just looked at it like that? Well, one thing would happen is I wouldn't get my way as much, right? That's definitely what would happen. If I counted others' opinions as greater than myself, if I counted others more significant than myself, then I'm not going to get my way as much. That's just a guarantee. But I'm going to be doing what God wants, right? So again, I think that's a challenging command. And there's tons here. We're at time, but I think just going back to what we were talking about with these prophets back on question 3, just the expectation that we should have that God's going to call us to do things that we don't want to do. And that is going to be the purifying of our faith. And when we do what God calls us to do, in the midst of that, because I know it's happened to many people here, when we continue to be faithful in the midst of the challenge, we can go back to that and be like, the next time it happens, and the fire's a little bit hotter, we can say, hey, remember how God delivered, right? You think Abraham ever forgot about the ram, the ram in the bushes? Right? Something's happening, and Sarah's like, oh, and he's like, Sarah, the ram in the bushes, right? Like, come on. Talking a lot. Lot's like, you might get the worst land. And Abraham's like, dude, I got the ram in the bushes. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about that, right? I trusted God, and God came through 100%. So whatever, bring it on. It'll be fine. You can tell me to do whatever He wants. I know He delivers. I know He keeps His promises. I've seen it, right? So I'll just keep following His commands because I just keep seeing that His way is better. All right, let's say a prayer. We'll close out. God, You are a faithful God. You are worthy of all of our trust. Our assurance is in You and not in ourselves, not in this world. Those are lies that try to tempt us, that try and turn us away from faithfulness to You, from being obedient to You. But we just see through time, through history, how You have cared for Your people. Not that You've made their lives easy, but You have brought them closer to You, which is more valuable than anything. And help us to see it that way. Help us to trust You, to be obedient to You, and whatever You call us to do. We pray that You'll keep us safe as we go our separate ways. And pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
This is only once a month, you guys.